The Great Hall of the Galaxy Council stretched so far that the ceiling disappeared into artificial clouds. Representatives from 300 species sat in circular rows, their forms ranging from crystalline beings that sang in light language to massive creatures that floated in tanks of methane. At the center podium, High Commander Vexthar stood tall, his forearms spread wide in a gesture of dominance. His scales gleamed deep purple under the lights, and his voice boomed through the translation devices that everyone wore. The Zithrani Empire demands access to Sector 447, Vexthar declared. These farming worlds are wasted on primitive species. We will bring order, efficiency, and proper civilization to these systems. The human representative, a small woman named Sarah Chen, sat quietly in her delegation's area. She wore a simple gray suit and looked unremarkable compared to the exotic aliens surrounding her. Her hands were folded on her desk and her expression was calm. She had heard speeches like this before. Around the chamber, various species murmured their responses. Some agreed with Vexthar. The Zithrani were powerful after all. They had conquered 400 worlds across their 3,000-year empire. They had weapons that could crack planets and armies that numbered in the billions. Most species in the council had learned not to anger them. But then from the ancient Vaxian delegation a figure rose. Kreloth was old beyond measure. His species had been exploring space when most of the council's members were still single-celled organisms in their home oceans. His body was insect-like, with 6 legs and translucent wings that hadn't flown in centuries. When he spoke, his voice whistled through breathing holes along his thorax, and the translation came through as something resembling sadness. "I must speak," Kreloth said. "I must warn this council about what you are considering." Vexithar's eyes narrowed. The Vaxians always speak in riddles and warnings. "Your time of dominance ended millions of years ago, old one. This is the age of the strong." "Perhaps," Kreloth replied, "but the strong often fall because they do not listen to those who have seen empires rise and die like waves on a shore." He turned slowly, addressing the entire council. "Sector 447 contains 12 human colony worlds. The Zithrani propose to take these worlds. I advise against this action with every fiber of my being." Several species made sounds of confusion. The insectoid cricks clicked their mandibles in what translated as laughter. The gaseous Felnox made bubbling sounds in their containment spheres. "Humans? The concern was about humans. Humans have been in space for only 300 years, one representative called out. They have small fleets, outdated weapons. Why should we fear them?" Kreloth's wings trembled. "Because I have seen their kind before. Not humans specifically, but their psychological pattern, their way of thinking." He paused and the chamber fell silent. When Kreloth spoke of the ancient past, even the proudest species listened. 4 million years ago, in a galaxy far from here, my ancestors encountered a species we called the Pursuers. They were not the strongest race, not the most advanced, but they had one characteristic that made them the most dangerous beings we ever met. When wronged, they did not fight wars. They conducted hunts. Hunts that lasted generations. Hunts that never ended until every member of the enemy species was dead. Sarah Chen remained still, but her eyes were locked on Kreloth now. The Pursuers were provoked by a species called the Zhen. The Zhen attacked a Pursuer colony ship and killed 3,000 of their young. It was a military miscalculation, nothing more. The Zhen offered reparations, territory, resources. The Pursuers refused. They spent 600 years hunting the Zhen across space. They followed them through wormholes into pocket dimensions to the edges of reality itself. They found every Zhen, every single one, and they killed them. The last Zhen died alone on a frozen moon, hunted by Pursuers who were born centuries after the original attack. The Pursuers themselves went extinct shortly after, because they had spent so much of their civilization's resources on this hunt. But they succeeded. The council chamber was silent now. Even Vexithar had stopped his posturing. "I have studied humans for 200 years, Kreloth continued. "I have examined their history, their psychology, their cultural patterns. They are Pursuers. They may not know it themselves, but the pattern is identical. They form deep emotional bonds with their group members. They have long memories. They tell stories of wrongs committed against them thousands of years ago as if they happened yesterday. And most importantly, they have a concept they call vendetta. When you harm them deeply enough, they do not seek victory. They seek complete destruction of the enemy, regardless of cost to themselves." "Ridiculous," Vexthar snapped. "You're describing monsters, not the weak farmers we've observed. Humans are soft, They negotiate. They trade. They avoid conflict when possible. Yes, Kreloth agreed. Until they don't. Humans have a saying, speak softly and carry a big stick. They prefer peace, Commander. But preference is not the same as capability. If you attack their civilians, if you harm their children, you will activate something in them that you cannot negotiate with. Something that will not stop. Sarah Chen finally stood up. All eyes turned to her small form. She looked tired, like someone who had given this same speech too many times. The Vaxian representative is correct, she said simply. We prefer peace. We want to trade, to learn, to coexist. But we have limits. If you attack our colonies, if you kill our people, we will respond, and our response will not be proportional. It will be total. We will not stop until the threat is eliminated completely. Vexthar laughed, a harsh barking sound. Is that a threat, human? Your 12 little colonies against the 400 worlds of the Zithrani Empire? Your population of 50 billion against our 200 billion? Your 300 ships against our 5,000? It's not a threat, Sarah said quietly. It's a warning. The same warning the Vaxians just gave you. Please don't do this. Choose different worlds. Go in any direction except toward our colonies. We're begging you. The way she said begging made several council members uncomfortable. There was no emotion in it. Just a flat statement of fact. The council voted. 207 species voted to allow the Zithrani expansion. 73 voted against it. 20 abstained. The Zithrani had the legal right to claim Sector 447 according to galactic law. The worlds there were classified as Tier 3 colonies, not fully developed, not under full protection. Vexthar turned to Sarah Chen with a satisfied smile. Your warning is noted and rejected, human. Tell your colonists they have 3 cycles to evacuate or submit to Zithrani rule. Those are their only options. Sarah Chen gathered her documents. She looked at Vexthar for a long moment, and something in her eyes made him uncomfortable, though he would never admit it. I hope you reconsider, she said. Please. She walked out of the council chamber. Behind her, Kreloth watched her go. He turned to his aide, a younger Vaxian, and whistled softly. Prepare our species' long-term bunkers. We will need to hide for a time. Master, surely it won't come to that. It will, Kreloth said. And when it does, the galaxy will learn what my ancestors learned 4 million years ago. Never, ever harm a pursuer's young. Vexthar returned to his flagship in orbit around Nexus Prime. He immediately ordered the fleet to prepare for the occupation of Sector 447. 3 days later, 200 Zithrani warships entered the system containing New Bethlehem, a human agricultural world. 2 million humans lived there, growing food for other colonies. They had 12 defense satellites and 1 small patrol ship. The attack was scheduled for dawn. New Bethlehem was beautiful in the morning light. The planet had 3 small continents covered in golden wheat fields that stretched to the horizon. The main city, Hope's Landing, housed most of the 2 million colonists. They were farmers, teachers, children, elderly people who had retired to the quiet world. A few thousand were military veterans, but they had come here to leave war behind. When the Zithrani fleet appeared in orbit, the planetary defense coordinator, Marcus Webb, was having breakfast with his daughter. His console beeped with the alert. 200 warships had just dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly above the planet. Marcus activated the emergency broadcast. This is planetary defense. All citizens, this is not a drill. Unidentified fleet in orbit. Proceed to shelters immediately. Military personnel report to stations. He didn't believe the shelters would help against 200 warships, but procedure was procedure. High Commander Vexthar broadcast his message on all frequencies. Humans of New Bethlehem, you are now property of the Zithrani Empire. Surrender immediately. Deactivate all defenses. Prepare for occupation forces. You have 1 standard hour to comply. Marcus looked at his daughter Emma, who was 16 years old. She stared at him with wide eyes. Dad, what do we do? We follow the law, Marcus said. He opened a channel to the Zithrani flagship. This is Coordinator Marcus Webb. We are a civilian colony under the protection of United Earth. Any attack on this world is an act of war. We request immediate contact with the Galaxy Council to mediate this situation. Vexthar's face appeared on the screen. His forearms crossed. The Council has already voted. This system is now Zithrani territory. Surrender or die. Marcus took a breath. Every human colony had the same standing orders, passed down from Earth's government. In case of hostile occupation, stall, negotiate, give Earth time to respond. But never surrender without a fight, because surrender meant becoming slaves, and humanity had a very bad history with slavery. We refuse, Marcus said quietly. This is our home. Leave now, or we will defend it. Vexthar's expression showed what might have been surprise. You have 12 satellites and 1 patrol ship. We have 200 warships. You are either brave or stupid. We're human, Marcus replied. Those tend to be the same thing. He closed the channel and activated every defense the planet had. The 12 satellites opened fire. The patrol ship, commanded by Captain Sarah Okonkwo, charged directly at the Zithrani fleet. It was a tiny vessel, barely larger than a shuttle armed with outdated weapons. It fired everything it had at the nearest Zithrani cruiser, managed to damage its shields, and was destroyed 3 seconds later. The satellites lasted 2 minutes longer. Then Vexthar gave the order that would change galactic history. Begin bombardment. Destroy their cities. Leave enough alive to serve as slaves and examples. I want survivors to tell other humans what happens when they refuse the Zithrani Empire. The bombardment began. Plasma beams struck Hope's Landing, turning buildings into vapor. Kinetic weapons fell like meteors, creating craters where neighborhoods had been. The shelters, built to withstand storms and accidents, collapsed under military-grade weapons. Marcus held his daughter as the shelter around them shook. The lights went out. Emergency power failed. Then the ceiling collapsed. The bombardment lasted 3 hours. When it ended, 1.8 million humans were dead. 200,000 survived, most of them badly injured. Zithrani troops landed and began rounding up survivors. They were loaded onto transport ships to be processed as slaves. On the Zithrani flagship, Vexthar watched the reports. 1.8 million dead, 200,000 captured. The planet's infrastructure was destroyed. It would serve as a perfect example to other human colonies. Send a message to the Galaxy Council, Vexthar ordered. New Bethlehem has been pacified. The sector is now under Zithrani control. Any human colonies that resist will face the same fate. The message was sent. It reached Earth 3 days later, carried by an automated probe that had been hiding in the system's outer asteroid belt. United Earth Government received the transmission in the middle of the night, Earth Standard Time. President Amara Okafor watched the footage of New Bethlehem burning. She watched Zithrani soldiers dragging human children onto transport ships. She watched bodies being bulldozed into mass graves. She sat in silence for 10 minutes after the video ended. Her military advisors waited. Her diplomatic staff waited. Everyone waited for her response, expecting rage, tears, demands for immediate war. Instead, President Okafor spoke in a flat, emotionless voice. Activate Protocol Nemesis. The military chief looked shocked. Madam President, Protocol Nemesis is— I know what it is, Okafor interrupted. Activate it now, full authorization. No limitations. Protocol Nemesis had been written 50 years ago by military theorists who imagined the worst-case scenario, an attack on human civilians so severe that normal warfare would be insufficient. A protocol that would redirect every human ship, every intelligence operative, every military asset to a single purpose. Not victory, extinction. Within 1 hour, every human military vessel received new orders. Stop whatever you're doing. Find the Zithrani. Kill them, all of them. Officers received sealed documents explaining their new mission. Some wept when they read them. Others simply nodded and got to work. President Okafor addressed the Galaxy Council via emergency broadcast. She appeared on screen, her face calm, her voice steady. Behind her, the flags of Earth's nations hung in silence. This message is for the Galaxy Council and for the Zithrani Empire. You were warned. The Vaxian representative told you what would happen. You chose not to listen. 1.8 million human civilians have been murdered. 200,000 have been enslaved. This will not stand. She paused, looked directly at the camera, and continued. To the Zithrani Empire, we offer one chance. Surrender High Commander Vexthar and every officer who participated in the attack on New Bethlehem. Release all human prisoners unharmed. You have 72 hours. If you comply, we will limit our response to the individuals responsible. Another pause. If you do not comply, we will not declare war. War suggests you have a chance of winning, of negotiating, of surviving. Instead, we declare extinction. We will find every Zithrani, every soldier, every civilian, every child. We will hunt you across the galaxy. We will hunt your children. We will hunt your children's children. We will not stop. We will not negotiate. We will not forget. Run, hide, scatter to the edges of the universe. We will find you. She leaned forward slightly. You killed 1.8 million of our people. We will count to 1.8 million. Every Zithrani death will reduce that number by 1. When we reach 0, we will consider our debt paid. Not before. The count begins in 72 hours. This is not a threat. This is a promise. We are human. We remember our dead, forever. The transmission ended. On the Zithrani homeworld in the Imperial Palace, Vexthar watched the human president's message and laughed. His advisors laughed with him. 200 billion Zithrani against 50 billion humans, 5,000 Zithrani warships against 300 human vessels. The humans were delusional. Ignore them, Vexthar ordered. They're making empty threats because they know they're weak. Prepare our defenses for a conventional attack. When they come, we'll destroy their fleet and then take Earth itself. The 72 hours passed. Nothing happened. No human fleets attacked. No declarations of war. The galaxy began to relax. Perhaps the humans had been bluffing after all. Then, on the 4th day, Vexthar's personal estate on the Zithrani homeworld exploded. His mate died instantly. His 3 children died in their sleep. The estate's security forces found evidence of human infiltration, and on the wall of the burning building, written in paint that glowed in the firelight, was a message in Zithrani script. 1.8 million. We've just started counting. The explosion at Vexthar's estate was just the beginning. Within a week, 17 more attacks hit Zithrani targets across their empire. A military depot on Zithros Prime vanished in a flash of light. An orbital station above their secondary colony world was sliced in half by weapons fire that came from nowhere. A transport convoy carrying Zithrani officials simply disappeared between star systems. No wreckage was ever found. The Zithrani military scrambled to respond, but the attacks made no sense. Human ships appeared in systems that should have been impossible to reach. They struck with precision, destroyed their targets, and vanished before Zithrani reinforcements could arrive. The few times Zithrani forces managed to corner human vessels, the humans would fight to the death, often self-destructing their ships rather than be captured. But the humans weren't attacking military targets exclusively. That would have made sense. That would have been war. Instead, they attacked everything. Civilian shipyards, trading posts, mining colonies, agricultural stations. Anywhere a Zithrani lived, they were now a target. 3 weeks after the attack on New Bethlehem, every Zithrani citizen woke up to find a new broadcast on their communication devices. It was a human woman, elderly, with gray hair and sad eyes. She sat at a desk with a simple background. No weapons, no threats, just an old woman and a list. My name is Margaret Chen, she said in perfect Zithrani language. I was a teacher on New Bethlehem. My daughter Sarah, my son-in-law Marcus, and my 3 grandchildren died when you bombed our world. I survived because I was visiting Earth at the time. She held up a data pad. This is a list of every person who died on New Bethlehem. 1.8 million names. We know every single one. Their ages, their jobs, their families, their dreams. We remember them all. Margaret's expression didn't change, but her voice grew harder. We will read these names aloud, one at a time, across Zithrani space. Every time a Zithrani dies, we will cross off one name from this list. We are currently at name number 6,412. We have a long way to go. The count continues. The broadcast repeated every day. Different humans appeared, reading names. Sometimes they were military officers in uniform. Sometimes they were civilians who had lost family on New Bethlehem. They read the names slowly, clearly, making sure every Zithrani could hear them, and at the end of each broadcast they would announce the current count. 1,793,588 names remaining. The psychological impact was devastating. Zithrani soldiers began to understand that this wasn't a war to capture territory or resources. Every Zithrani death was a deliberate reduction of a specific number. The humans were counting. They were keeping score, and they would not stop at 1.8 million, because that was only the number from New Bethlehem. In the Galaxy Council, species began to panic. The Zithrani ambassador demanded intervention. The humans are violating every rule of civilized warfare. They're targeting civilians. They're refusing to negotiate. You must stop them. Sarah Chen, back at her desk in the council chambers, looked at the Zithrani ambassador with dead eyes. We're violating the rules of warfare? You killed 1.8 million farmers. You enslaved children. You started this. We're finishing it. The council was divided. Some species argued that human actions were too extreme, that two wrongs didn't make a right. Others pointed out that the Zithrani had been warned. The Vaxians, through Kreloth, refused to vote on any intervention. 4 million years ago, my people tried to stop the pursuers. Kreloth whistled. We sent fleets, we tried negotiations, we threatened sanctions. None of it mattered. When a pursuer species begins a hunt, you can either stay out of the way or become part of the hunt. I recommend staying out of the way. Several species quietly began helping humanity with intelligence. They didn't do it openly, because they didn't want to anger the Zithrani. But information about Zithrani ship movements, military installations, and official locations mysteriously found its way to human intelligence services. The species helping weren't doing it because they supported the human methods. They were doing it because they were terrified they might be next. The message was clear. Never ever harm human civilians. 6 months into the hunt, the Zithrani Empire began to fracture. Outer colonies started surrendering to human forces, begging for mercy. Some received it. Humans would accept surrender if the colony handed over anyone who had participated in the New Bethlehem attack. These Zithrani were taken away and never seen again. Colonies that cooperated were left alone, though always under human surveillance. Other colonies fought back and were destroyed. The humans made no distinction between military and civilian targets in these cases. If you resisted, everyone died. The brutality shocked the galaxy, but it was effective. More and more Zithrani colonies began to surrender. High Commander Vexthar, now in hiding, watched his empire crumble. He had moved to a secret bunker on a remote moon, protected by his most loyal soldiers. He still believed he could win. The Zithrani Empire still had billions of citizens, thousands of ships, hundreds of worlds. They just needed to find the human homeworld and strike back. He ordered a desperate plan. If humans cared so much about their civilians, then capturing human civilians would give the Zithrani leverage. A Zithrani battle group ambushed a human hospital ship, the Mercy of Athens. The ship was clearly marked with medical symbols. It carried 3,000 human patients, doctors, and nurses. The Zithrani boarded it, killed anyone who resisted, and took the ship to a secret location. Vexthar personally broadcast the message to Earth. We have 3,000 of your people. Stop your attacks immediately, or we will execute them one by one. You have 24 hours to respond. He expected negotiations, offers of prisoner exchanges, demands for proof of life. Instead, Earth's response came in less than 1 hour. President Okafor appeared on screen again. She looked even more tired than before, as if she hadn't slept in months. You captured the Mercy of Athens, 3,000 human lives. You think this gives you leverage? She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was ice. You just added 3,000 names to our list. The count is now 1.803 million. Those 3,000 people on the Mercy of Athens are heroes. They know what happens next. We do not negotiate. We do not trade prisoners. We do not give you leverage. Everyone involved in capturing that ship will die. Every Zithrani who knows where that ship is will die. And if you harm one person on that ship, we will kill 10,000 Zithrani for each one. Thank you for making this clear. The transmission ended. Vexthar stared at the screen in disbelief. They refused to negotiate? For their own people? What kind of species does that? The answer came 6 days later. Human intelligence found the location of the Mercy of Athens. It was hidden in an asteroid field in a neutral system, guarded by 50 Zithrani ships. A human strike force arrived. They didn't try to board the hospital ship. They didn't attempt a rescue. They fired weapons that destroyed everything. The Mercy of Athens, the Zithrani ships, the entire asteroid facility. 3,000 humans died along with 2,000 Zithrani. Then human forces hunted down every Zithrani who had known about the hospital ship's location. Officers, soldiers, staff, communications workers. Anyone who had any information about the operation was found and killed. It took 3 months. 4,000 more Zithrani died in the hunt for those responsible. The message spread across the galaxy like a shockwave. Taking human hostages doesn't give you leverage. It adds to the count and ensures that everyone involved dies, including the hostages themselves. The Zithrani Civil War began soon after. Some Zithrani factions wanted to surrender Vexthar and all the officers responsible for New Bethlehem. Others refused, calling it cowardice and betrayal. Zithrani killed Zithrani in massive numbers. fighting over whether to appease the humans or maintain their honor. The humans watched and waited. Sometimes they would supply both sides of the civil war with weapons and intelligence. They wanted the Zithrani to destroy themselves, and it was working. 2 years after the attack on New Bethlehem, the count stood at 1,200,000 names remaining. 600,000 Zithrani had died. Most were killed by humans, but almost 200,000 had died in the Civil War. The humans counted them all equally. A dead Zithrani was a dead Zithrani, regardless of who killed them. The Zithrani Empire, which had stood for 3,000 years and ruled 400 worlds, was broken. 3 years into the hunt, the Zithrani Empire no longer existed as a unified government. What remained was scattered across the galaxy. Refugee ships, hidden colonies, individuals using false identities to blend into other species' populations. The Zithrani homeworld was under human quarantine, with Earth's warships in permanent orbit, ensuring no one left the planet without permission. The count stood at 400,000 names remaining. 1.4 million Zithrani had died. High Commander Vexthar was still alive somewhere, and the hunt continued. Commander Jennifer Torres led one of the human hunter teams. She had been a school teacher on New Bethlehem. Her husband and 2 children had died in the bombardment. Now she commanded a small stealth ship called the Requiem, hunting Zithrani war criminals across space. Her crew was entirely made up of New Bethlehem survivors. They spent months tracking a single target, General Krathix, who had personally commanded the orbital bombardment. Intelligence suggested he was hiding on a trading station in neutral space, disguised as a cargo worker. The Requiem docked at the station and Torres's team went in quietly. They found Krathix loading containers in a warehouse. He had altered his appearance, filed down his distinctive scales, and learned to walk like someone who had worked manual labor all his life. But his eyes gave him away. When he saw Torres and her team, he knew immediately that he had been found. "Please," Krathix said in broken human language. "I was following orders. I had no choice. I have younglings now. They are innocent." Torres walked up to him slowly. "You personally killed 60,000 humans in the first hour of bombardment. You targeted the schools first. Did you know that? You made sure the children died first so their parents would panic." "It was war," Krathix whispered. "No," Torres replied. "It was murder. And now it's justice." She shot him once, quick, clean. His name was crossed off the list. Torres and her team left the station before local security even knew anything had happened. This scene repeated thousands of times across the galaxy. Human teams hunting down every single officer who had been at New Bethlehem. The Zithrani, who had participated in the attack, learned that there was no hiding. Humans would wait years if necessary. They would track false identities, follow family connections, infiltrate communities, and watch suspects for months before striking. Some Zithrani attempted suicide rather than face the humans, but even that was tracked. Every death counted toward the total. The galaxy watched in horror as humanity demonstrated patience that seemed inhuman. But the humans called it very human indeed. They told stories of how they had hunted war criminals from their own ancient conflicts, decades and even centuries after the crimes. How they had found fugitives who had hidden for lifetimes. How they never forgot and never forgave. On the Zithrani homeworld, billions of civilians lived in a strange state of supervised existence. They could go about their daily lives, but human surveillance was everywhere. Satellites watched from orbit. Drones monitored the cities. Human soldiers stood at checkpoints. The Zithrani were not prisoners exactly, but they were not free either. A resistance movement formed, calling themselves the Talon of Zithros. They believed that attacking humans on the homeworld would demoralize Earth and force negotiations. They planted a bomb in the Human Administrative Center in the capital city, killing 15 human personnel and 50 Zithrani civilians who worked in the building. The human response was immediate and terrifying. Every member of the Talon of Zithros was hunted down within 2 weeks. Not just the members, but their families, their friends. Anyone who had known about the resistance and not reported it. 3,000 Zithrani died in the purge. Then the humans broadcast a message across the homeworld. "You are alive because we allow it. You will remain alive as long as you remain peaceful. Any attack on human personnel will result in the death of 1,000 Zithrani for every human killed. This is not negotiable. This is survival. Choose wisely." There were no more resistance attacks after that. In the Galaxy Council, Sarah Chen now sat alone at the human delegation desk. She looked older, worn down by years of defending human actions. Other species accused humanity of becoming the very monsters they claimed to oppose. "You have become worse than the Zithrani," one ambassador declared. "You kill civilians. You destroy families. You refuse mercy. How are you different from the empire you destroyed?" Sarah looked at the ambassador for a long moment. "We didn't start this. We begged them not to attack. We warned them exactly what would happen. They chose to ignore the warning. They chose to kill our children. Everything that has happened since is a consequence of that choice. But the innocent Zithrani civilians were living in an empire built on the conquest and suffering of hundreds of other species," Sarah interrupted. "They benefited from that empire. They supported it. They sent their children to serve in its military. They celebrated when other species were conquered. The Zithrani Empire killed billions over the centuries. We are finishing what they started. And when we reach 1.8 million, we will stop. Not because we have to, but because we said we would. We keep our promises." Kreloth, now even more ancient than before, spoke up. "The question is not whether humanity is justified. The question is whether other species will learn the lesson. I ask the Council, has anyone else attacked human civilians since New Bethlehem?" The chamber was silent. No one had. Every species in the galaxy now gave human colonies a wide berth. Human ships traveled safely through space that had once been pirate territory. Trade agreements heavily favored humans because no one wanted to risk offending them. Earth's diplomatic weight had increased 1,000-fold. "That is the purpose of this," Kreloth continued. "Humans are teaching the galaxy a lesson. A brutal lesson, yes. A horrible lesson, certainly, but an effective one. They are ensuring that no one will ever attack human civilians again. In that regard, they have already succeeded." 4 years after New Bethlehem, the count reached 200,000 names remaining. Vexthar was still alive, and the humans were getting close to finding him. Intelligence suggested he had fled to the Galactic Rim, to a region of space that was barely explored, home to only a few mining operations and trading posts. Commander Torres and the Requiem were assigned to the search. Her team spent 6 months checking every station, every asteroid base, every remote outpost. They would arrive quietly, scan for Zithrani life signs, investigate any leads, and move on. On a forgotten mining asteroid called Relay Station 447, Torres found something. A worker named Kex, who kept to himself and worked night shifts to avoid other workers. He had the right build, the right age, and when Torres showed up at his quarters at 3 in the morning, she saw the recognition in his eyes. But it wasn't Vexthar. It was Commander Sixth, third in command of the fleet that had attacked New Bethlehem. He had been responsible for communications and targeting during the bombardment. "Where is Vexthar?" Torres asked, her weapon pointed at his head. Sixth sat on his small bunk, looking defeated. "I don't know. We separated years ago. He could be anywhere. He could be dead. Please, I just want this to end. Kill me and be done with it." "We will," Torres said. "But first, tell me everything you know about the other commanders. Every person who was in that fleet. I want names, positions, last known locations." Sixth talked for 3 hours. He gave up 17 names that the humans didn't already have. When he was done, Torres kept her promise, 1 shot. His name was crossed off the list. The intelligence from Sixth led to 12 more arrests and executions over the following months. Each one brought the count closer to 0. Each one brought humanity closer to the end of its hunt. But everyone knew the hunt wouldn't truly end until they found Vexthar. He was the one who had given the order. He was the one who had laughed at the warnings. And he was still alive somewhere, hiding among the stars. The count stood at 147,000 names remaining. The galaxy held its breath and waited for the inevitable conclusion. 7 years after the attack on New Bethlehem, the count reached 0. 1.8 million Zithrani had died. The humans kept their word exactly. They had said 1.8 million, and they had counted every single death. Military, civilian, old, young. The number was reached. President Okafor, now at the end of her 2nd term, addressed the galaxy. "The debt for New Bethlehem has been paid. We will cease all active operations against the Zithrani people. However, the 3,000 names from the mercy of Athens remain. Those responsible for capturing that hospital ship are still being hunted, and High Commander Vexthar remains at large. The hunt for these specific individuals continues. Across human space, people reacted in different ways. Some celebrated that the nightmare was over. Others felt empty, realizing that counting to 1.8 million hadn't brought back the dead. Commander Torres, who had spent 7 years hunting war criminals, sat in her quarters on the Requiem and cried for the first time since New Bethlehem. Her children were still dead. Her husband was still gone. The revenge had been complete, but it hadn't healed anything. On the Zithrani homeworld, billions of Zithrani wept with relief and horror. Relief that the counting had stopped. Horror at what they had lost. The Zithrani species still existed, but barely. Their population had been cut in half. Their empire was gone. Their culture was shattered. Children grew up being taught that their ancestors had brought extinction upon themselves by attacking humans. The name Vexthar became a curse, a warning, a symbol of arrogance and disaster. But Vexithar himself was still alive, and he was about to make a fatal mistake. He had been hiding on a remote mining asteroid for 3 years, working under a false identity, keeping his head down. He used drugs to suppress his natural scales color and wore contact lenses to change his eye appearance. He never spoke to other workers. He lived alone in a tiny compartment. He thought he was safe because the humans had announced the count was complete. What Vexthar didn't understand was that humans had never stopped looking for him specifically. Commander Torres received a tip from an unlikely source, a young Zithrani who had been born after New Bethlehem. The young Zithrani had recognized something in the way one of the miners moved, the way he held himself with unconscious authority, despite pretending to be a simple worker. Torres took her team to the asteroid personally. They didn't announce themselves. They didn't raid the place with weapons drawn. Torres simply walked up to Kex, the miner working alone in Tunnel 7, and spoke in the Zithrani language. "Hello, Vexthar." He froze, turned slowly, saw the elderly human woman standing there with no weapon drawn, just looking at him with eyes that had seen too much. "How did you find me?" he asked. "No point in pretending anymore." "We never stopped looking," Torres replied. "Did you think we would forget? Did you think the count ending meant we forgave you?" Vexthar stood up straight, his natural authority returning. "I was a military commander. I followed my culture's ways. We are conquerors. It's what we do." "What we did. You were warned," Torres said. "The Vaxians told you exactly what would happen. Our ambassador begged you not to attack. You laughed. You called us weak." "You are weak," Vexthar said. "Look what you became. You're monsters now. You killed civilians. You destroyed families. You're no better than me." Torres stepped closer. "You're right. We became monsters. We became exactly the kind of monsters needed to stop you, and we will carry that weight forever. But here's the difference. We chose to become monsters to protect our people. You were already a monster who preyed on the innocent. We didn't enjoy this. You did." She pulled out a small device and activated it. Vexthar's face appeared on screens across the galaxy. Broadcast live. The entire universe was watching. "This is High Commander Vexthar, the architect of the New Bethlehem massacre. He will stand trial for his crimes." "Trial?" Vexthar laughed bitterly. "Why bother? You're just going to kill me anyway." "Because we want everyone to see what you did," Torres replied. "We want your own people to understand. We want the galaxy to remember. You're not dying as a martyr. You're dying as a lesson." The trial lasted 3 weeks. It was held on Earth, broadcast across every inhabited world. Survivors from New Bethlehem testified. Military experts showed exactly how the bombardment was conducted, how Vexithar had specifically targeted schools and hospitals first to maximize psychological damage. The Zithrani military codes were presented, showing that Vexthar had exceeded his authority, that even under Zithrani law, his actions were war crimes. Vexthar was allowed to defend himself. He claimed he was following orders, that his culture valued strength and conquest, that humans were weak and needed to be taught their place. His defense only made things worse. It showed the galaxy exactly why the Zithrani Empire had needed to be destroyed. The verdict was unanimous. Guilty of crimes against sentient species, guilty of mass murder, guilty of enslavement. The sentence was death. On the day of execution, Vexthar was led to a simple chamber. No ceremony, no speeches, Just a quick injection that stopped his hearts painlessly. He died in seconds. His last words were, "You'll regret this. Someone will come for you someday. Someone will make you pay." President Okafor, attending the execution, replied quietly, "We already regret it. Every day. But we'll never regret protecting our people. And if someone comes for us, we'll teach them the same lesson we taught you." With Vexthar's death, the last of the major war criminals from New Bethlehem were accounted for. Small-scale hunts continued for a few more years, tracking down the final names from the mercy of Athens. But the great hunt was over. 50 years later, the Galaxy Council met in its grand chamber. The faces had changed. The species had evolved, but the structure remained the same. A young representative from a species called the Karathi stood to speak. The Karathi were new to the galactic community, aggressive, militarily powerful, and eager to expand. "We demand access to the Terran border systems," the Karathi representative declared. "These humans are soft, weak, complacent. They talk of peace and trade. We will take what we want." The council chamber erupted in panicked responses. Species shouted warnings. The Karathi representative looked confused. From the back of the chamber, an impossibly ancient voice whistled through translator devices. Kreloth, now so old that he was kept alive by medical technology, spoke. "Young one, do you see that empty seat?" He gestured with a trembling limb to a seat marked with the Zithrani symbol. "It had remained empty for 50 years. What of it?" the Karathi asked. "That species once had an empire of 400 worlds and 200 billion citizens. They were powerful, advanced, and proud. Then they attacked a human farming colony. Within 7 years, their empire was dust. 1.8 million of them died in a counting that spanned the galaxy. Their homeworld is still under human supervision. Their culture teaches their children that their ancestors' greatest mistake was underestimating humans." The Karathi representative shifted uncomfortably. "Surely you exaggerate." "I do not," Kreloth replied. "I am 4 million years old. I have seen species rise and fall like waves. The humans are the most dangerous species I have ever encountered. Not because they are strong, but because they refuse to forget. Attack them, and they will not fight a war. They will conduct a hunt. A hunt that lasts generations. A hunt that ends only when every enemy is dead or surrendered. That empty seat is not a memorial. It is a warning." Sarah Chen's granddaughter, who now held the human delegation seat, spoke up. "We prefer peace. We want to trade with you, learn from you, cooperate with you. But if you attack our civilians, if you harm our children, there is no force in this galaxy that will protect you from what we become. Not laws, not treaties, not distance, not time. We will find you." The Karathi representative sat down slowly. "We withdraw our territorial demands." "Wise choice," Kreloth whistled. On Earth, in the rebuilt city of Hope's Landing on New Bethlehem, a memorial stood at the site of the original settlement. 1.8 million names were carved into black stone walls that stretched for miles. Children on school trips walked along the walls, reading names, asking their parents what happened. "Why did we do it?" One child asked his mother. "Why did we hunt all those Zithrani?" His mother, a woman who had been born after the massacre, knelt down to his level. "Because we're human. Because we remember our dead. Because we want to make sure this never happens again. Every species in the galaxy knows about New Bethlehem. They know what happens when you attack humans, and because they know they don't attack us. That's why you're safe." "But so many died," the child said, looking at the endless names. "Yes," his mother agreed, "and we remember every single one. That's what makes us human. We remember." Above New Bethlehem, human patrol ships moved in quiet orbits. The planet was safe. Every human colony was safe. Not because humans were the strongest or the most advanced, but because the galaxy had learned a simple truth. Humans don't start fights, but they finish them. Every time. No matter how long it takes, no matter what it costs, they count their dead and they balance the scales. That empty seat in the Galaxy Council remained a warning for the next 1,000 years. Some species called it barbaric. Others called it justice. But every species in the galaxy understood it.